Hi, everyone. Welcome to the free Wednesday Masterclass. We are so happy that you're here today. And now I'm going to tell you what we're talking about. Today, we're going to be talking about the conversation that you're avoiding now and how to have it before it gets worse. Dee Dee, welcome. I'm glad you're here. So, my question for you is, do you have a conversation that you are avoiding having? And you don't need to tell me what it is, but I just want you to think about a conversation that you know that you need to have, but you're avoiding it. Maybe it's telling someone that you would disagree with them, or maybe it's a boundary that you need to set with someone that feels uncomfortable. Maybe you need to talk about money and that's uncomfortable for you. Or maybe you need to discuss someone's behavior. The important thing to remember is that avoiding the conversation doesn't avoid the problem. It still affects how you behaved with that person. So, for example, you may end up being shorter with that person than usual. You might avoid them. Maybe you make assumptions, but the bottom line is that resentment grows. So, can you tell me, Dee Dee, why we avoid having difficult conversations? Any thoughts? Good morning.
Yes, I do. I said we don't want to bring things to a painful point.
Exactly. That's beautifully said. Normally, what's happening is that we're trying to protect something. We're either trying to protect the relationship, we're trying to protect hurting other people. Sometimes we're trying to protect ourselves from being put in an uncomfortable position. And sometimes we're protecting our sense of control because we can control what we say, but we can't control the way the other person takes it, how it lands with that other person. And that's tough because, one of the things we do is that we rehearse the conversation, the whole conversation in our heads over and over and over again. And really, what we need to practice is the first sentence. We need to make sure that it's a good first sentence. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But two mistakes that people often make when they have conversations, when they need to have a conversation that makes them uncomfortable or that they're avoiding, is either avoidance or explosion. So normally what happens is that we avoid it because it's uncomfortable. So we don't say anything. So we don't say anything, we don't say anything. And finally, when we do, we explode. And then we bring up things from 3 months ago that have absolutely nothing to do with the issue. We've just let it build so much inside of us. So what happens then is that we wait, and then the conversation becomes bigger than the issue because, like I said, we bring up stuff from 3 months ago. So it's better to have several small, difficult conversations than letting it blow up into one big conversation. Now, last week we talked about something called the CALM acronym. Does anybody remember CALM? That we talked about it, even if you don't remember what it stands for? CALM is an acronym. Yes. Do you remember any of it, Dee Dee?
Calm. Um, I forget what the C stands for clarity.
It stands for
Uh,
curiosity.
of curiosity. Oh, okay. No, I'm then I'm not remembering it correctly.
CALM is, hello, Nisha, welcome. CALM stands for curiosity, assess your emotions, listen intently, and move the conversation forward intentionally. So that's where someone's having a conversation and it's a difficult conversation. Somebody is starting to get agitated. And so the first thing you do is you center yourself and then you ask a curiosity question. You seem to be upset by something. Can you help me understand what it is? So you've now opened the door for that person. Now, they may vomit emotion all over you. At least you have opened the door and you've acknowledged that something's going on. And then you assess the emotions. For example, you may feel like you've been interrupted a lot. So the emotion that you're feeling is they don't respect me because they keep interrupting me. They don't think I'm competent because they keep interrupting me. So it's not just your emotion, it's their emotion. If they're the one who has started the conversation and they are agitated, then you can say something like, and this goes back to your curiosity question, you seem to be angry. Can you tell me what's going on? Or you seem agitated. You seem frustrated. Name it. And when you ask them that, when you bring it to their attention, it normally helps to diffuse the situation.
Okay, we lost Karen. Can anyone else hear me? Are we frozen?
I can hear you.
Okay, so we lost Karen, it looks like.
I'm back.
She's back.
I'm sorry. I realized that I froze. So I don't know. I was looking at the camera, not at the screen. So I'm not sure when you lost me. Ah, you're muted. You're muted, Dee Dee.
Helps diffuse the situation.
Helps to diffuse the situation exactly by naming the emotion. And it diffuses the situation because, and it looks like I am getting frozen again. Now you can see me again, right? I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure why it's being fussy. We're going to try one more time, and if you lose me, then we're going to have to wrap up.
Okay.
And I think you've lost me again. Nope, there I am.
Yes.
I feel like a magician. Now you see me. Now you don't. Now you see me. Now you don't. Okay, one more time.
It helps diffuse the situation, is what you said.
So either you are agitated or someone else is agitated. So the first thing you do, whichever one is agitated. So stick with me. I'll be back.
She's going to love this video.
And it looks like we're still recording. That's awesome. I'm on my phone, so hopefully this will work. So anyway, whether you are upset or whether the other person is upset, that is where you need to start the calm method. So whichever one of you is upset, first thing you need to do is center yourself. You need to make sure that you are calm walking into this conversation. And you start the conversation, whether it's you're upset or they're upset, with a question. Either you seem to be agitated. Can you help me understand what's going on? Or you can say something like, the last several times I've been interrupted in my meeting and it makes me difficult for my recommendations. Can you help? Can we talk about what's happening? So again, you're asking a question. The second thing you're going to do is assess the emotions. Dee Dee, I'm going to ask you to mute for a second, please. I'm getting a lot of feedback. Thank you. So the second thing you're going to do is assess the emotions. And again, you want to assess your emotions and the other person's. So you're going to determine if you're angry or frustrated, if you feel disrespected. You need to figure out where you're coming from, and you need to center that and get it under control. You do that by taking a breath and pausing. But if the other person is agitated and you've already asked them, and this ties into the curiosity question, you seem agitated, you seem angry, you seem frustrated. Can you help me understand what's going on? So you're going to name the emotion, whether it's yours or theirs. Then you're going to listen intently, and that's where things really start to get diffused. Because if someone is upset or someone is feeling disrespected, as long as you are hearing them, they are feeling listened to, they're feeling heard, and that automatically shrinks the emotion. It dissipates some of the anger or frustration. And then you move the conversation forward intentionally. And that's where you either you want to determine what the next steps are. You want to say, I agree, I understand where you're coming from. I will make sure that I don't do that next time. Or, great. So next time that you feel the need to interrupt me, you're going to raise your hand, or you're going to wait until I finish speaking, or you'll talk to me after the meeting. So you will determine what is the resolution of this conversation, and then where do you go with it next? Now, what do you do if the conversation is not going well? In that situation, you take advantage of it and you say, we don't seem to be getting anywhere. So let's pause and come back to this in 5 minutes, in an hour, tomorrow. If the conversation is not going anywhere, there is nothing that is going to fix it once it hits a point of no return. So it is better to pause the conversation. Now notice, pausing is not the same as walking away. It is just a pause. You're de-escalating it intentionally. And that is what really solves the problem, by giving both of you a break. Because when you come back, the emotions are not as high and you can fix it. Now, I mentioned earlier about people practice the entire conversation in their head. And when they do that, they have it all planned out. But then what happens is somebody says something different than you planned. And then you get all messed up because that perfect script that you had in your head isn't there anymore and you feel lost. So what you want to do is make sure that you have a good first statement. Don't practice the whole speech because it will make you crazy. But make sure that you have a good first sentence going into the conversation. And that sentence is an observation, an impact, and an invitation. Observation, impact, invitation. And that's where you get to observation. I've noticed at the last couple of meetings, I've been interrupted several times. There's your observation. The impact. It makes it very difficult for me to finish my recommendations. Invitation. Can we talk about what's happening? So you've now named the problem in an observation. You've explained how the problem is impacting you or the situation. And then you give them an invitation. And the invitation is, can we talk about what is happening? That approach starts a conversation on an even keel. And it makes it better from where it's going for there. You don't know what they're going to say next. You haven't planned the entire script. But what you have done is stated the problem, the impact, and invited them to talk to you about it. Now, that's really hard to argue with. So that approach should dissipate any anger that's coming up from the other person's part. And the other thing that you do in a conversation to dissipate the anger, to de-escalate the anger, is by not making sure that it happens. Number one, by observation, impact, and invitation. But then you also want to make sure that you don't use absolutes. You always, you never, everybody thinks you, obviously you don't care about me. Those are absolutes. Now, the truth is, nobody always does something. And they don't never do anything. Everyone doesn't feel a certain way. So that exaggeration really ignites emotion. And by accusing someone of, obviously, you don't care about me, then that just incites them more because they do care about you. So you want to stay away from absolutes. Another thing that you want to stay away from is stories. You want to make sure that you're looking at the facts as opposed to the stories. So if somebody doesn't respond to your email in 4 days, then you begin to assume things like they don't respect me. When the truth is, maybe the email got lost in their big pile of emails and they accidentally deleted it. Or maybe the boss gives another project or a client gives another project to somebody else. And then you're thinking, they don't value me. Well, can you have a more productive conversation about a fact or a story? The answer is the fact. You're not going to be able to have a productive conversation if you just look at me and say, Karen, you don't respect me. Huh? What? Karen, you didn't reply to my email for 4 days. Oh my word, Dee Dee, I am so sorry. I didn't see it. You know, I deleted a lot of emails this week, and I bet I accidentally deleted yours with all the others. Now, there's the fact. You gave me a fact, I gave you a fact. If a client awarded a project to someone else, you may think that they don't value you, but you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't want to make that assumption. All you do is look at it and say, okay, Nisha got the project, I didn't. Now, if you want, you can have a discussion with your client and see if you can find out nicely why Nisha was awarded the project and I wasn't. And if you ask, they will tell you. And I'm sure it has nothing to do with your value. I'm sure it has everything to do with the fact that Nisha's proposal was more comprehensive. She got more value for the money that they were investing. Now, notice they got more value for the money they were investing, not that they didn't value me. It's about a proposal, it's not about a person. So you want to look at the facts and not the stories that you put in your head. Now, what do you do when the other person starts to get defensive? Can you give me some ideas? Maybe something like, if they're overreacting, or they start saying things like, I never said that. Well, you do the same thing. That's not what happened. If they start getting defensive, you can't argue with any of those points. First of all, because they're real to them. They may not be real, but they're real to them. So, and you can't argue with something that is real to them. But what you can do is say, I don't want to turn this into an argument. Well, we may remember it differently. Or maybe I'm not questioning your intent, but let me tell you the impact of it. And the example would be, I get interrupted several times during the meeting, and it makes it difficult for me to finish presenting my recommendation. So you can either tell them you're not questioning their intent, that you may remember it differently, or I don't want to turn this into an argument. And normally, those types of things might diffuse it when you then follow up with the calm method, where you ask a curious question. Can you tell me why you're getting so upset? Okay, so you're angry. I hear that you're angry. And then you listen, which diffuses it, and then you move the conversation forward. And if you can't do those things, then you look for the pause and you tell them that you'd like to get together in 10 minutes, an hour, tomorrow, and take care of it when you're both calmer. So that's what happens if they get defensive. But what happens if you get defensive? Now, at that point, the calm method works for you too, because you want to center yourself and you want to ask yourself, what emotion am I feeling? Because once you name the emotion, it's not this big bad boogeyman anymore. If you say, I'm angry, then you can say calmly, I'm angry, or I'm frustrated, and here's why. And then you listen to what they have to say. And you listen intently. Even though you're angry, you've had a chance to say your piece. Now listen to what they have to say. And then remember that the purpose of the entire conversation is to move the conversation forward into resolution. Now, that does not mean that you win the conversation. Credibility doesn't mean that you always win. It means receiving uncomfortable feedback without fighting back. It means that you receive uncomfortable feedback by maintaining stable emotions during the process. So you may have had a misunderstanding about something. Somebody may have said something or done something, and it made you feel disrespected. Well, it could be that you misunderstood the situation, or the other person misunderstood you, and so they overreacted. But the bottom line is that you don't you don't always get to win. And when that's the case, when you realize that maybe you overreacted or that you misunderstood the situation, that's where you need to say things like, well, can you give me an example? Or say something like, I didn't realize that. Can you tell me more? Those two different approaches can diffuse your emotions very quickly, and it will balance the conversation because both of you cannot be highly defensive. Because if you are, it's time for a pause and you need to take a break. But if one of you is highly defensive, it's still not going to be a productive conversation. So if the other person's defensive, you use the calm method to dissipate it and de-escalate the emotion. Or you use the calm method on yourself, you name the emotion in your head, and then you can calmly say, I'm angry because. You still want to name the emotion. I'm angry because. I'm frustrated because. But know that sometimes when you are angry, that the problem was you. The problem was that you misunderstood something. So don't feel like you have to win every difficult conversation, because your credibility is more important than winning. Excuse me for a second here. Thank you. So your credibility is more important than winning the argument or winning the difficult conversation. Now, there's one more thing here that's really important, and this is true regardless of who is initiating the difficult conversation, regardless of who is being defensive, and that is the power of the pause. We've talked about this before in the point first communication, and it applies to conversations, difficult conversations as well. Except I'm going to add one more thing. I'm going to put a pause in the front and one in the back. When you're having a difficult conversation and someone has said something to you or has initiated the conversation with you, what you want to do first before you open your mouth is pause. If you need 5 seconds, take 5 seconds. It's going to seem like a long time, but you need to get your thoughts and your emotions in order before you open your mouth. So, for this point first communication, I'm going to say pause first, then point first. And that is where, and I'm going back to the same example we had before, I've noticed in the last couple of meetings, I've been interrupted several times. That's the point. The explanation is, it makes it difficult for me to finish my recommendation. And the next step is, can we have a conversation about this? And then you stop talking. Now, this is where it's really important that you stop talking and you don't open your mouth, no matter how long it takes. Now, there's a chance that the other person is going to hear the quiet and immediately start filling the space because they're uncomfortable with it. If they do, just let them talk. Let them talk themselves out. But sometimes they will pause too. And their intention may be, well, I can wait as long as you can. But in the calm and quiet of the pause, emotions can de escalate. And that is what you want to happen. So the pause is very important. Just like point first is important in every conversation you have, including difficult conversations. Now, there are going to be difficult conversations that you have. They may be arguments. They may be having something that just makes you uncomfortable, like talking about money or having to have a conversation with a family member about setting a boundary or talking to someone else about something that has made you uncomfortable or angry. Those are all difficult conversations. Everybody's going to have them. The question is, are you going to be a great communicator? Because great communicators have difficult conversations, but they have them respectfully and they have their emotions stabilized. They stick with point first communication and they know when to stop talking. And sometimes stop talking means saying, this isn't going well. We're both upset. Let's come back and talk about this in an hour or tomorrow. So those are the things that you do to make sure that the difficult conversation that you need to have doesn't get worse than it has to be. Now, does anybody have anything they want to talk about? Because if you don't, then we're going to end really early this morning.
You know, this all sounds like good advice, but there's a point when you know someone's walking on you and you just have to deal with it. And doing the polite conversation or trying to act like a good communicator just seems to be tromping on your own inner wisdom.
Well, what you may need to do though is focus on you. And you focus on you not by lashing out, but by trying to take this in a polite way. Now, there are two things. First of all, the conversation may need to go, this isn't getting us anywhere. Let's come back and talk about this tomorrow. And then the emotions might be a little calmer and you will be a little more prepared to address it. But sometimes the answer is, we're not going to get this resolved. And if you can't get it resolved, then continuing the conversation and trying to win or trying to get them to admit that they're full of it or admit that they're trying to be hurtful, that they're trying to tear you down, that doesn't serve a purpose. So that's where you need to be the adult. You need to look at them like a child and you need to treat them like you would treat a child. And that is to say,
I need to take a call. It's
of
important.
course, my dear, go ahead. Go ahead.
Can I share something?
Of course.
So I think for me, it's more so putting it into practice, but I'm
Hmm.
also realizing that sometimes you have to just walk away
Yep.
because to have the conversation, the other person has to be willing to want to resolve it too. And if
Hmm.
you can't, it's I think that's where it becomes more so going against your wisdom, because you're trying to do the right thing, but you can see that they're not. And
Hmm.
that's the point where you have to remove yourself from the situation.
Hmm.
So I think that's how see that.
And I agree with you. And that's part of the walking away part of it. Sometimes you can't say, let's get back in an hour or tomorrow when we're calmer, because sometimes that's simply not the answer. The answer is, we're not going to get this resolved. We see this differently. And so I think it's important that we stop talking now before we say things that we're not going to mean. But you need to understand that if you do that, you are impacting the relationship. And which is okay, because some relationships are meant to end, and you should not be treated abusively. But you need to know that if you do walk away from the situation, that the next time you get together, if there is a next time, that there's an elephant in the room. And at some point, you're going to need to address it. But if the person is toxic, and number one, you need to end the relationship, then you need to end it. You need to walk away. And that's just it. If you're going to walk away, but the relationship is going to continue, then you need to understand that there is going to be another conversation somewhere down the road. Because, sometimes other people don't get it. They don't know, or they don't care that they are being abusive. They don't know, or they don't care that they've hurt your feelings, or they've made you angry, or that you didn't do anything wrong. So you can walk away from that conversation, but not the relationship. And they won't care the next time they see you. They think it's normal behavior for them. But we are all sensitive people. And so we're going to have this thing that's going to be between them and us moving forward. So if you're walking away for good, that's fine. But if you're walking away and you're going to continue the relationship, it has to be dealt with at some point. What were you going to say?
Would you say that if the conversation has to come up again down the road, that's when you would bring another person in who is capable of understanding, or who can recognize that, let's just say I'm trying to have the conversation with someone to, clear the situation, but if they're
Hmm.
trying to, if they don't care, or, you know, or just they know they don't care, or maybe they don't know that they're coming across a certain way,
Hmm.
having a second person there to kind of um just be there, so it's not like it's always a problem between you and the other person, and someone is trying to resolve it.
Hmm. That's a great idea. Having a mediator for a really bad situation is a good point. Because again, sometimes people don't realize they're just toxic, and they don't realize either how they're coming across, or they don't care how they're coming across. And in those situations, you're never going to get a resolution that's going to make you happy. So if you want to or have to continue the relationship, then a mediator is a very good idea, Nisha. Because again, they either don't know or they don't care. And either way, and I don't want to make it sound like you're not going to win, as in you have to win or lose the conversation. But if you can't say your piece because they keep interrupting you, then that's not going to serve a purpose. And you might as well not continue the conversation. Whereas a mediator can help diffuse the situation. And if the other person is still toxic and not listening to the mediator, then you really need to evaluate the relationship, because you don't deserve to be treated that way. Dee Dee, do you want to finish your conversation?
I forgot where I was.
Well, talking about the fact that sometimes people just want to walk all over you.
Well, I have a neighbor who's 89 years old. And, she is a complete narcissist. And she just walks in your house and walks, if I've left the door open for someone to come in and fix the toilet, she just walks in, uses the TV, and I have had the difficult conversation with her many, many times. And then she always comes back. She's like, I don't understand why you're hurting me. I don't get it. What is the point? Nobody likes me. And I'm like, she plays compassion. She plays on people's emotion. And she continues, even though they ask her and describe what conduct that she's doing that they don't like, she'll leave, maybe take a pause and come back and, act like the conversation never happened, and that, she doesn't understand. She doesn't get you. Please explain again why you hate her. And it moves from not feeling that she's respecting you to you hate her. And then, you have no compassion for any other human being. And you're like, fighting with the stupid is absolutely useless.
Yeah,
And I'm like, you can't, you just, and in my heart, I kind of feel like I know that person isn't stupid. I've seen them, act with a twist because of something I've done before to cut them off. And that it's actually all a tactic and a manipulation. And I'm sitting there thinking, no, just, I've told the person, don't come to my house. Don't you do this. I'm calling the police. I've had to just, that's it, become absolutely rigid, because there is, and they're a neighbor. It's not like I can get them to go away outside of going to court and getting an injunction. And I'm like, oh. Yeah. And who gets an injunction on an 89-year-old tootling person?
Well, that's an outlier situation that you can't fix. And unfortunately, she's 89. She's lived this long, and she feels entitled. And that's a personality thing that you're not going to be able to address. So, you need to do whatever you need to do, whether it means calling the police or just understanding that she's a little bat crap crazy and
I noticed in the acting like a great communicator, most of our communication roles are efficient and effective.
Uh-huh.
And do you actually have relation or communication outside of that, or is everything kind of effective and efficient in your communication? And do you have a lot of people that drift in with weird problems?
Oh yeah, I've had all kinds of weird problems in my coaching. Like you said, you can't fix stupid. But no, in all seriousness, you're having conversations with your girlfriend, and you're sitting around over lunch or coffee, and you're talking. You already have a relationship relationship, you know what each other's thinking. There's already clarity in that relationship. The importance there is clarity. So in some relationships, they're just easy. And so clarity can be a 5-hour conversation where you talk for 20 minutes and then I talk for 10 and you talk for 5, then I talk for 30. And, that's not what I would call efficient, but it's not necessary because there's already clarity emotionally between the two of you. The great communicator modality is focused primarily in a business relationship where clarity is important, executive presence of being emotionally stable in times when emotional stability is important but hard, where you want to um, de-escalate problems, where you want point first communication so that you're not rambling. That's when, quote, great communication modality is really significant. Now, if you and your girlfriend haven't seen each other for a while and you start talking to each other and it's not connecting, then you may need to step back and start with point first communication and then build from there. But generally, the things that I talk about are in business types of situations where um, you're building a relationship, not like your girlfriend relationship that you've known each other for 40 years, but a professional relationship of clear communication and making sure that people are aware of your value, because the days of I do a good job and my boss notices and they promote me are gone. We are all way too busy and we're moving 100 miles an hour. So you need to be clear. You need to be emotionally stable. You need to be able to make sure people know without being conceited. You can make sure people know your value. And so by making sure they know your value, that's how you get the opportunities. That's how you get the raises, the promotions, the special projects. So that's a great question. So yes, mostly what I talk about is with the exception of today, mostly what I talk about are business related. But these things also apply to family and friends as well as business situations, because family and friends are probably people we have more disagreements with. They may not be the big blow up disagreements, although sometimes because emotions are so close and there's so much history with other little things that just keep building up and building up and building up, that finally the explosion happens.
A lot of times I will, in a situation that it doesn't seem appropriate to break the flow of communication, I will abstain and not bring things to a painful point, even though there is a difficult conversation that needs to be had. And most of the time, it's because I'm respecting the bigger view. That there are people learning, or that there are other people that, their time is very valuable and they can only be there a short period. So going through that is not appropriate. I find that okay communication to not bring something up until there is the right space for it.
I agree with you. There is a time and a place. And that may mean that the next day or later that afternoon, you reach out to the person to discuss it outside of the venue that you were in.
Mm-hmm.
But I greatly respect the fact that you are recognizing time and place.
Okay, and yeah, difficult conversations in a venue is always a very difficult. You have to find the right position within the venue to bring up the conversation. Um, can you address, or would you suggest addressing the venue as a question about what the person expects in conduct? So kind of like the old etiquette way. If your mother wanted to tell the person not to use their fingers with fried chicken, she would correct her son. Say, "Oh, Johnny, don't use your fingers with the fried chicken. It's too greasy. You'll get your cold." And that way she told the guest without, addressing him directly. So that kind of usage.
That's a little passive aggressive. I mean, I understand what you're saying,
Yes.
but normally you want to deal with it head on, if you deal with it at all. Um, it's a tough situation. Now, in that example that you just gave me, it depends on the scenario. If this person is genuinely embarrassing themselves because they don't know better,
Mhm.
you're at the governor's ball, this is not the
Right.
time.
Right.
um, then you may quietly go up next to that person and say something. But
Mhm.
but normally you would just let them go. But in the venue, when there are a lot of other people around, it may not be appropriate. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't address it at a later time, because that stuff will build. And then ultimately you end up with an explosion that's bigger than the real issue, because it's piled on all of these things. Those are great questions, ladies. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you being here today. Thank you, thank you. I
Thank you.
always appreciate when the two of you are on. You add so much value. We are going to call it, so I'm going to turn off the recording now. Thank you for everyone watching the replay. I hope this was helpful to you. And thank you for your patience when I was experiencing technical difficulties. So please write your comments below, and we'll go from